Welcome to the Sky Commander Flight Brief. It's your mission-ready podcast for drone pilot training and aerial insights across Canada.
From Transport Canada rules to real-world drone ops, we break it down, take you higher, and help you earn your wings. Because here at skycommander.ca, we don't just fly.
It hints there's more to it. It's a masterclass, a deeper level, maybe a philosophy or a community focus, perhaps.
It's definitely intriguing, sets them apart from just, a basic tips show. Skycommander.ca is the obvious next step. Precisely. If you're thinking about flying a drone in Canada, boom, this content is aimed right at you.
Powered by skycommander.ca.
The elite podcast for Canada's drone pilot. Okay, let's get started. We've got a really crucial topic lined up today, pulled directly from the stack of sources you sent over. We're digging deep into RPAS documentation, those flight logs, maintenance records, and really unpacking why keeping them isn't just like bureaucratic busy work. It's fundamental. That's
exactly right. Our mission here in this deep dive is to take these regs, these guidelines, all the stories from your sources, and just cut through the noise.
Okay.
We want to show you not just what the rules are for logging flights and maintenance here in Canada, but really get into the why they exist, how they protect you, and what they actually mean day to day, whether you fly for fun or it's your business.
And honestly, this isn't going to be just dry compliance talk. We're actually going to uncover some pretty surprising history.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, from the very first flight log ever, way back, all the way to logging flights on Mars. And along the way, we'll see how these records can be like your ultimate shield, from a simple spot check to a serious investigation. Think of this as your shortcut to being truly clued in on this vital, often kind of overlooked part of being a drone pilot.
Absolutely essential.
Okay, so let's unpack this then. Where did this whole idea of, meticulously logging flights even start in aviation? Because it goes way further back than you might think for drones.
It really, really does. Looking at the history in your sources, we're talking 1903. The Wright brothers.
Wow, okay.
They recorded their very first powered flight in just a simple notebook. And that notebook, that's basically the first aviation logbook ever.
No kidding. So essentially, every modern rule we have about documentation, even for RPAS, are drones. It all sort of stems from that one notebook entry. That's quite a thought.
It is. And to show just how fundamental this idea is, like across all aviation, one source points out even NASA's Ingenuity helicopter on Mars. It has to log flight data. Date, time, wind, battery voltage, software stuff. They're tracking it all, even on another planet. Talk about off-world compliance.
It's intense. A checklist for Mars.
Right. So if we bring this back home to Canada, RPAS documentation rules, they weren't always this detailed. Your sources describe how before 2019 it was, a bit of the Wild West.
Right.
Drone offs were often just kind of squeezed into general aviation rules or maybe managed case by case with special flight operation certificates, SFOCs. There wasn't one standard set of logging rules for everyone.
So what changed? What made Transport Canada say, okay, we need specific drone regulations now?
Well, the material points to a really key reason, safety. And it was a direct response to a big jump in near misses. Yeah, between 2014 and 2018, there were over 1,000 reported drone-related airspace incidents in Canada. And the problem was, when they tried to investigate,
they couldn't figure out what happened.
Exactly. A lot of investigations just stalled because the pilots couldn't provide the basic records, what happened, when, who was flying.
So the lack of logs directly led to the rules changing. That makes sense.
Precisely. That inability to figure things out was a huge driver behind CAR's Part 9's Canadian aviation regulations. Part 9 coming into force in 2019.
Okay.
That's what brought in mandatory maintenance records, Section 901.48, and flight records, 901.82, for the first time for most RPAS folks. It standardized things and made it really clear whose job it was, the pilot in command, the PIC, or the operator, to keep these logs.
And it didn't just stop there in 2019, did it? The rules kept evolving.
Not at all. Between 2021 and 2023, we saw more clarifications, especially through TP 15263. That's a Transport Canada guidance.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
Yeah, it spells out more detail on what info is needed, acceptable formats, that kind of thing. And then even more recently, SOR 2025-70 tightened things up again. It explicitly called out software and firmware updates as maintenance.
Oh, interesting.
And even requires you to log when no maintenance is necessary.
So it really feels like this ongoing push, doesn't it? From early days enthusiasm towards real professional aviation standards.
Definitely. And what's interesting here, the sources show it's not just about safety, though that's huge. It's also pressure from insurance, liability worries, and just the massive growth of the commercial drone sector.
Right, needing professional systems.
Exactly. They need scalable, auditable systems.
Wow.
The rules basically had to catch up with the tech and where the industry was heading.
Okay, that phrase comes up a lot in the sources you sent. If it's not logged, it didn't happen. That sounds pretty final. Where does that come from?
Yeah, it's a powerful idea.
Right.
It originated in military aviation maintenance.
Ah, okay.
The core idea was, look, if the logbook entry for a task is missing, we treat it exactly the same as if the task itself was never done, even if maybe the mechanic did do it. No ambiguity.
Okay.
And Transport Canada, they've pretty much adopted that same principle today.
Yeah.
When it comes to showing you're compliant, silence in your logs, well, it's not just unhelpful, it's seen as non-compliance.
So logging isn't just like keeping notes for yourself. It's your only actual proof that something happened or was checked.
Absolutely. And the sources highlight some specific, kind of detailed rules that really hammer this home. These aren't just nice to haves.
Okay, like what?
All right, CR's 901.823 says records must be made as soon as practicable after the flight. The insight there, you can't just go home and batch log a week's worth of flights later.
Right, they want the record close to the event.
Exactly. Delay equals non-compliance. Then there's CR's 901.482. Maintenance logs have to include the name of the person who did the work, not just tech checked it. Accountability.
Okay, makes sense.
And 901.483. This one trips people up. You must log. No maintenance was necessary if you do a check and find nothing needs fixing. It proves you actually did the check.
Ah, not just that you forgot to log anything.
Precisely. CR's 901.82 says log any abnormal occurrences affecting safety, not just crashes. We're talking GPS dropouts, weird battery warnings, control link glitches, things that tell a story about the drone's health.
Good point.
Then 901.82C on location. It needs to be specific coordinates or map references. Near Calgary doesn't cut it.
Yeah.
You need precision for verification later.
Right.
And finally, this is crucial, under TP 15263 and the Aeronautics Act itself, records have to be immediately accessible if an official asks. Your sources stress this, saying, oh, it's on my laptop at home, or I'll email it. That's non-compliant right there on the spot.
Wow. Okay. No wiggle room there.
None. So to meet these standards, what actually needs to be in the logs? The sources give us a pretty solid checklist.
All right, so for flight logs, under 901.82, beyond the basics, pilot name, date, time, duration, location, what else are we talking?
Right. You also need the specific drone you used, the purpose of the flight, the weather conditions, wind, temp, the airspace class you were in.
Okay.
Details of any permissions, like NEV drone approvals, that's the TC system for airspace access.
Got it.
Any incident reports, or like we said, any abnormal stuff that happened during that specific flight.
Okay, comprehensive. And then for the maintenance logs, 901.48, what's key there?
So this log tracks the aircraft's health. You need the date the work was done, a clear description, inspections, repairs, servicing, tweaks the name of the person who did it.
Right, accountability again.
And, like we mentioned, explicit entries for software or firmware updates. You know, the version number, date installed, any issues you saw during or after. Component swaps, especially critical ones like props or motors, should track serial numbers if they have them. And don't forget 901.483.
Logging, no maintenance required.
Mandatory.
Yeah.
You have to show you looked.
That point about firmware updates counting as maintenance, I can see how pilots might miss that, thinking maintenance is just, physical stuff.
It's a super important insight from the sources because modern drones are basically flying computers, right?
Yeah.
Updating the firmware can totally change how it flies, its safety. So Transport Canada explicitly treats it like any other major repair inspection. Log it.
Makes sense. And beyond just those two logs, what else makes up a really complete compliant system?
Well, for a really solid setup, especially if you're flying commercially, you should also keep copies of all your airspace approvals, detailed incident reports, even for minor glitches,
Okay.
dated and signed pre-flight and post-flight checklists, and your site assessment documents, especially if you're flying near people or buildings. The goal, as the sources put it, is that for any flight, you should be able to open a folder, digital or physical, and basically reconstruct the whole thing. Who, what, where, when, why. Prove it all.
Right. Tell the whole story.
Exactly. Now, once you've made these records, TC also cares about how long you keep them and where they are.
Yeah, the sources mention a minimum time, right?
Yep. Under car cares 901.48 and 901.82. The absolute minimum is 12 months from the date of the maintenance or the date of the flight.
Okay.
But the sources strongly suggest commercial operators hang on to them for longer, like 2 years, maybe more, Just gives you a buffer for insurance stuff or any legal issues that might pop up later.
Good advice. And that immediate accessibility requirement, how strict is that really?
Critically strict. The Aeronautics Act gives inspectors, RCMP, people like that, the power to ask for your records, and you have to show them immediately.
So no running home to grab the binder.
Nope. Whether it's paper logs or digital files on your tablet, they have to be readable, complete, and available right there, saying you'll get them later. That's non-compliant. You need a system for instant access in the field.
What about relying just on digital logs, like an app on a tablet? Is that okay?
Digital logs are totally legal, but, and this is a big but, the sources point out, there are risks.
Like
your tablet battery dying, or losing cell signal so you can't reach your cloud storage, or the app just crashing. If you can't show the log right then to an inspector, you're non-compliant.
Ouch.
So you absolutely need backups, cloud sync, and maybe local storage too. And ideally use systems that help with data integrity, like timestamping that makes it hard to fudge dates later.
So what about the drone's own data? Like DJI drones save flight records automatically. That's not enough.
This is a really key point the sources make. That telemetry data is super valuable. GPS tracks, battery voltage, motor speeds, great forensic detail. It can definitely support your logs.
But it doesn't replace them.
Exactly. It does not meet the legal requirement for the operator-created logbook. Your log needs to show the human side. Who was the PIC? Why were you flying? Site conditions, checking permissions. Did you do your pre-flight? That stuff isn't in the drone's telemetry.
Gotcha. Telemetry is from the drone. The log is about the operation.
You nailed it.
And this isn't just, theory. The sources give some really concrete, even kind of dramatic examples of where documentation is your shield, where it really matters.
Exactly. This is where it all comes together. Think about that surprise spot check. You're flying near, say, an airport or critical infrastructure. An inspector walks up. Show me your airspace approval, today's flight log, and the maintenance record for this drone.
Right then and there.
Right then and there. If you don't have all three accessible, you failed. That's an immediate violation. Serious penalties possible.
Or what about the drone crashes? Maybe after a firmware update you did, or maybe you had a hard landing last week you didn't think much of.
If you didn't log that firmware update as maintenance, or you skipped documenting your pre-flight checks, you basically have no defense if the client or TC starts asking hard questions or takes action.
Your logs are your proof you did things right.
They're your primary evidence. The sources even mentioned a case, a global drone outage, where operators couldn't claim insurance for lost business because they hadn't logged the firmware update that caused the problem as maintenance. Ouch.
Wow. What about complaints from the public? Someone says you flew right over their backyard.
Perfect example for precise logging. Your flight log shows exact GPS coordinates. You pull up your NAV drone map overlay showing your approved zone. Maybe you even have geotagged photos from the drone.
Proof.
Instant proof. You can shut down the complaint right away. Shows why near Calgary just doesn't cut it right. You need specifics.
And even if nothing bad happens on a specific flight, just having gaps in your logs over time can bite you later.
Absolutely. Say your drone crashes months down the road. Totally unrelated reason. TC investigates. They look at your logs and find weeks missing. Or you haven't logged maintenance checks, not even the no maintenance required entries.
They can still ding you.
They can fine you or suspend your certificate just for the bad record keeping, totally separate from the crash itself. The logs are their own requirement.
So good records really can save your certificate, your business, your reputation.
They are absolutely your shield. The sources had great examples. Forensic teams using logs to trace crashes back to tiny things like prop imbalances or battery warnings the pilot ignored. That global outage from the unlogged firmware. And even the RCMP using flight logs, telemetry, video data, everything to piece together smuggling routes and using the missing logs as evidence against operators trying to cover their tracks.
That's compelling.
It really shows the stakes. So the goal here, end of the day, it isn't just about passing an exam. It's about building these solid, repeatable documentation habits for the real world, for the field.
Which means understanding the why behind the rules, not just memorizing bullet points, right?
Exactly. Understanding the intent, safety, accountability, defensibility, and applying it smartly in those gray areas you hit in real operations. It means actually being able to log flights on the spot, using checklists effectively, maybe snapping photo proof and linking it, making it work practically.
What if you're managing, like, multiple drones, or you're part of a bigger company?
Good question. The rules, 901.48 specifically, apply per aircraft. So yeah, you need a separate maintenance log for each drone. No shortcuts.
Okay.
In bigger outfits, the operator, and the company usually, is ultimately responsible for the whole record system, even if individual pilots keep daily logs. And if you're flying under someone else's SFOC or as a subcontractor, you absolutely need to clarify upfront who logs what and who keeps the records. Avoid those gaps.
Any hints in the sources about where this is all heading, future trends?
Yeah, one interesting bit mentioned a potential push towards things like blockchain for logs.
Oh, okay. What?
The idea is they'd be immutable. Can't be changed after the fact. Totally tamper-proof. Aimed at meeting future audit standards, especially for complex, maybe even international drone ops, proving data integrity.
That's definitely thinking ahead. But okay, for today, based on everything we've gone through, what's the key takeaway for someone listening who wants to get to that elite pilot level of documentation?
I think it boils down to being legal, practical, and defensible. Legal.
Yeah.
Know the cars, 901.48, 901.82, TP15263, your Aeronautics Act duties.
Yeah.
Practical. Have a system that actually works for you in the field. Digital, paper, whatever, but make sure it's accessible, backed up, and you use those checklists.
Right.
And defensible. Actively create records that will stand up, protect you in an audit, an insurance claim, a complaint, even court. Mastery means building those reliable systems, maybe templates or SOPs, so every single flight is documented properly. Proving your due diligence every time. So pulling it all together, what does this deep dive really mean for you, the listener, who gave us these sources? It's crystal clear from the material. Flight logs and maintenance records. They are way, way more than just paperwork for Transport Canada.
They're absolutely foundational. For safety, for operating legally, they're your first line of defense if something goes sideways, crucial proof for insurance, even forensic evidence.
And remember that golden rule, right? Came up again and again. No matter the zone, the tool, or the drone, log it or leave it alone.
Or that catchy one. If you fly it, then you write it. If you break it, then you cite it. Kind of sticks with you.
It does. Ultimately, keeping thorough, accessible, accurate records. It's not just about avoiding trouble. It's a core part of being a responsible, professional, truly elite RPAS operator in Canada. It's what sets the pros apart.
That's a wrap on today's mission, Commander. See above, go beyond, get ahead. For more training, tools, and intel, head to skycommander.ca. If you learned something new, share it, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star debrief.